Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, and welcome to week 1 of 2025. This is that kind of weird in-between week though, but we're still going to call it week 1 wrap up. There'll be a brand new playlist that gets started, my full wrap up for December, as well as my yearly wrap up. Those are both available, including my top 10 reads of 2024. So if you haven't got a hold of those, make sure you check those out. I love making that video. It is almost 90 minutes long, so maybe it'll take you a couple sessions, but it is when I fully get to completely gush about all the favorites that I have, and it's amazing. So today there is not too many books to go over just because it was New Year's week and I was wrapping up a lot of that stuff. I'm also working my way through An Echo in the Bone still, which is very long, as y'all probably know. And I do have 2 of my 6-star rereads that are in this one, and I already talked about those in length in the monthly wrap-up, or the yearly wrap-up. So anyway, just getting that out of the way. This one probably won't be a super long one just because we're getting that, but we're going to be engines revving next week for sure. But that, I still have some fun things to talk about because I have, I think 4 new releases that I haven't talked about yet. And I also have an upcoming release that I am so excited to talk about. We'll talk about more when I get to it. But I do want to start off with some new patrons. So I am really happy with the month of giving that I did in my Patreon. I had that open to the public, and I think it was a really great idea. I want to do something like that again for my birthday month, which will be in March. It's not too far away. I understand if people don't want to stay subscribed to that in the meantime, but I do post things for the public there throughout the year. I don't only post for my patrons. And yeah, so I hope if you followed me there for the giveaways, you'll stick around. There'll be some treats there for you. I do still have some items for giveaways that I wasn't able to fit them all into December. I just had a lot going on, right? So you never know. Sometimes it'll be a surprise and it will pay to be following me there. But I did have some people start to become paid patrons at the end of all that. And so I just want to give them their shout outs real quick. So there is Ray N, R-A-E is their name, Ray N. Aoife, I believe I say that as Aoife. If I've read enough Irish stories, I think so. I have Aoife M, Jessica C, and Stephanie B all joined my Patreon. So thank you so much. I always get nervous at the beginning of the year that, I mean, I'm always honest with you guys, so I'll tell you that some people's resolution will be to cut back on things like that. And then once you are, I'm not an essential, utility for some people, which I understand. That's not said with any malice or anything else. I think it's kind of funny in a way. So you got to be prepared for it. But instead of losing some people, I gained some people, and that just made my heart so happy because, again, taxes are coming up and it's very stressful. But I also will be doing my next annotated pre-order, and it's gonna have some of the big books on it. It's gonna have the Frozen Fate trilogy, as well as the first 2 Outlander books will be available to purchase annotated from me. Those are gonna be quite hefty because they need to be, but this time around there will be payment plan options if you want to, and I think it's gonna be really fun. But I do have a max number that I'm going to take for that, just because, I mean, if you've seen the size of the Frozen Fate books, it's going to be a lot. But I wanted to do kind of a fundraiser, if you will, for taxes coming up. So I decided now's the time to do that, especially since the Frozen Fate trilogy were my favorite books last year. So anyway, that's all of that stuff that you'll know if you're my patron, because my patrons actually get first crack at signing up for that. There was one time where my patrons pre-ordered so many books that I had to close it before it really even went to public. So just so you know. But anyway, welcome to everyone. Okay, also, before I want to show off, look at this adorable little cup jar. Isn't it so cute? I got this at Hobby Lobby yesterday. I actually bought 2 of them. and it fits like it's about like a 12 or 13 ounces, because like a can of Coke like almost filled the whole thing. Isn't it adorable? I put my, I have a caramel iced coffee in here. It's so cute. So anyway, I won't be ashamed if I have to pick that up and take a sip of it, because it's too cute. I may go and buy a couple more, because they had 4 colors and I bought 2 of them and I love it so much I might go buy more. So, okay, enough of that. Let's get into this. So the first book that we have to talk about is I had an ALC of this book, though the book is already out. So if you like what I say, you can go read it. I'll have links down below to this book for whenever you want to read it. And that book is Mine to Gain by Maggie Rodden. So this was super interesting to me because, so I read, what's it called? Bull Rush. I read Bull Rush, like, I think it was in November possibly. And that was an arc or it was a book that had been sent to me by the author. She sent me a beautiful book box for this dark cowboy romance. And in that book, it was about a guy who had just gotten out of prison. He thought he had an ex-wife. He discovers she's really his wife. And then he decides that this is his second chance to win her over. And he basically kind of blackmails her into, you need to give me this long still as my wife before I'll let you out of this marriage or whatever. And in that book, we discover that hero, Ramsey, the reason that he went to prison was for like a manslaughter charge where he killed a guy who was stalking his friend's girlfriend. And I knew that was connected to her football series because I hadn't read those books, but like I knew about them. I was starting fresh with this series. And Bull Rush, where that is where Ramsey's family is from. And after he gets out of prison, he goes there for a while. By the way, if you see this is a Band-Aid. I have a scratch. I have a burn on my thumb, or on my finger. So I'm wearing a Band-Aid like a ring. So that's what that is. Anyway, it's distracting me. I talk with my hands and I'm like, what is that yellow thing on it? Anyway, so I knew about that. And this is book 2 in the series, Mine to Gain. But as often happens with ALCs, this is the one that was offered, with Must Love Audio. This was narrated by Lucy Rivers and Dane Anderson, and I think it was dual narration. I don't think it was duet. I think it was dual narration. And so yeah, I started with that one because, I mean, this cover is gorgeous. And as soon as I started reading this, I couldn't remember the name of the couple that like he defended, but Ramsey was friends with this guy in here. And then the heroine has a stalker, and I'm like, this is going to be the one. He's going to kill this guy at the end. So I did kind of have that foreknowledge that this is a real stalker and he's going to get killed. And so that is something that will happen in this one. But what is this one about? This one is a single dad, an ex's older brother, football romance, and single dad. So this one is Trix, and her name is Beatrix. Trixie is what the hero Cooper calls her. And she dated his brother for quite a few years. And so he knows her really well. They got along really well. His daughter really likes her. She was going to be his aunt, like going to be this girl's aunt. But then something happened a few years ago and things went sour and she's no longer with that brother. But she is actually starting as, I can't remember if she's helping with social media or is it photography that she's doing? No, that's a different book I read later on. That's photography. But either way, she's going to be working with the football team that Cooper plays for. And so she shows up. She's not able to get in because she doesn't have a pass. They didn't give her a pass yet. And so the guy at the gate is taking it very seriously and isn't letting her in. And Cooper comes up with his daughter. They're going to be getting in. And he's like, she's with me. And so he lets her in. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so embarrassed. And immediately there's a great rapport with them. We know they get along really well. And then we switch to Cooper's point of view. And it's very clear that he thinks she is beautiful and liked her and thought his brother was the biggest idiot in the world for ending or for things not working out and all that stuff. So all that's happening. And then a little ways into things, she discovers that she has this stalker. And it first actually kind of happens like there's a weird thing where like a letter gets sent. It's weird. there's pictures that get taken of them when they go to the fair, like with his daughter. They go to the fair, to the county fair. So she's hanging with her friends. And then, you know, the dad's like there for this date that his daughter has, but like is in the background. Completely respectable in my opinion. I think his daughter's only like 13. So good dad, good dadding. I love it. I've watched too much true crime to think otherwise, right? And so, but anyway, someone there takes pictures of them together and sends them or puts them on social media. And so she ends up staying at his house that night because she is freaked out. I do like in a way that she takes it seriously. The hero takes it a lot more seriously, having, you know, being someone who's in the spotlight, and he's like, you don't know, you know, and your apartment isn't as safe as like my house is or whatever. So I like that she takes it seriously, but he takes it even more seriously. So she ends up staying at his house, and then they end up deciding to fake date to give her protection. Because they're like, well, maybe this stalker will leave you alone if you're dating someone. So then this becomes fake dating, but like that's going to be awkward because she was with his brother. But the thing is, they both really want each other. I don't know if I'm explaining this well enough, but I liked this a lot. So I'm sorry if my like explanation is super convoluted, but they end up agreeing to fake date. And eventually, like, they're like, well, we're fake dating, we're gonna hook up with each other too. Like, it leads to that. But it's one of those where, like, it's the thinnest of excuses because they both really want to be together, but they're trying to think of a socially acceptable reason why they would, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so this was, like, on the darker side because of the stalker and because of, you know, some of that. But really, this was more of, like, I think it leans more contemporary than dark. Did I even put it as dark? No, I put it as contemporary. But it was really hot. It got pretty sexy because they do try out some really fun, sexy things together. One of the things that was like weird though, having read Bull Rush before, is the fact that like Ramsey is hooking up with this one girl. We never meet her or see her really, but there's like a double date camping trip that Cooper and Trix go on with Ramsey and his like fuck buddy. And it is weird because like, I know that Ramsey is going to be with his wife again soon, but to be fair, I'm not holding it against him. This is before jail, and it's before he knows that he's not divorced. Like, his wife is with someone else right now, too. Like, that's the whole point of that book. But it was kind of weird because I've read that one first, and I'm like, I don't want to see you hooking up with this girl, but anyway. So Cooper and Trixie, they do like a few naughty things. They like some dirty talk. They have outdoor sex, and there's some voyeurism, too. Like, the reason I brought up Ramsey and his fuck buddy is when they're on this camping trip, she sees, like, she goes down to the lake and she sees Ramsey and the girl, like, fucking, and it gets her really hot. And then Cooper comes up and he's like, are you getting hot spying on them right now? And they have, like, a whole thing. It's really hot. So I gave that one 5 stars because it was a great time. Also, while I was listening to Mind to Gain is when I did my newest book Nook. So that's also why I have this behind my head. So one of my friends gifted this to me for Christmas, and this one was probably, so I like the design of one of them better, but as for ease of putting together, this is the easiest one I did. Honestly, if I can find it, I'll link it down below, because I wish this had been like the first one I ever did. Like, honestly, because this one was a complete, sorry that I'm doing an ad for this right now, but I love these. This one was almost a completely snapped together one. Like, almost all of these pieces snap into place. And I will tell you, as someone who, this is the fourth model that I've made, the book Nook I made. You want one that snaps together, okay? The first one I ever did, I now know, is the hardest one I ever did. Did not know that, of course, before because I had no idea what I'm doing. But this one also, the electricity worked really well. Although, now that they're dry, I do want to try to tuck the lights up under it. Sometimes it's hard to do the electricity, but this one is so cool. It's like a little like hunting lodge almost, like back in there. And anyway, I brought that up because I did pretty much this whole thing while I was listening to Mind to Gain. This one only took me about 5 hours to complete. The The first one I ever did took me over 40 hours to complete because it was so complicated. But anyway, I'll put a link down below to this brand if you're interested, because if you have ever been interested in the book nooks I've showed, I did a whole video about one before. I did a vlog about making my last book nook. If you've ever been interested in them, this style was by far the easiest one. The electricity was pretty easy to do. I say electricity like I'm an electrician. And everything snapped together. And the glue that they sent with was strong enough to do the things they wanted, because that was something else I discovered. The model glue that gets sent with them is usually Elmer's glue, which is not strong enough to put anything together. But they sent this clear, like, tacky glue that worked really well. So anyway, sorry for the side note, but I love those, and I know some of you guys have asked me about them before, and I think part of the reason why I liked mine to gain so much is I was having a great time doing this as well. And you know, there's just something about it. Like audiobooks, a lot of it is atmosphere. It's why the narration's really important. It's why the mood you're in is really important. All those things go together to make a good story, you know? So I gave that one 5 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. Now that I've talked long enough. See, it doesn't matter how many books I have to talk about, you guys. You know I'm going to keep you in it. Right. Next up is a new release. This one is out already. It was Married to the Devil by Lillian Lark. And this was a great book, you guys. I gush about Lillian Lark whenever I get the chance. I think she writes not only great monster romance, but great romance. I think that she finds a way to really... humanize the monsters, whatever type of monster they are. And it isn't only about the interesting type of sexual scenarios you can get into with them, though that is a part of it. I won't lie, there's some fun, sexy stuff. And this one is an MMF, okay? So this is very deeply connected with Hoarded by the Dragon, okay? They're taking place kind of over top each other, and Ben, who is one of the heroes, he's a demon. He's almost an adopted son of Kalos, who is the dragon in Hoarded by the Dragon. So Hoarded by the Dragon is an accidental magical pregnancy between a fae/witch, and I think she's more fae than witch, I can't remember, but a fae and a dragon. She's a thief. She breaks into his place. They end up fucking, and he doesn't take her because he's going into heat, so they end up fucking, and she gets pregnant. And it's magical pregnancy, which means a bunch of things. So that book and this book are taking place at the same time, because the witch has a dear friend whose name is Stella. She is a half shifter, half witch, though her shifter side is dormant, so she can't shift, but she's still the daughter of, like, who was a shifter, like, leader. I don't know if he's a king of I don't understand, like, what his place was, but she doesn't have the shifter gene, so she was kind of, like, looked down on by her father, but she's still his heir. She just doesn't have really, like, the respect of his people the way that he did. And so then we have, the gargoyle, whose name is Remy Stoneheart, of course. And this gargoyle is very different from the gargoyles in Deceived by the Gargoyles, which is a reverse harem that is in this series, which was also pretty good. I like that one a good amount. But he is a much more vicious type. And he is also, so he's half gargoyle, half something else. I can't remember what he is mixed with. So it's made him a bit more of a crankier, angrier gargoyle too, because he also feels like he needs to prove himself sometimes. So there's all these different layers going on. Now, why it's good to have read Hoarded by the Dragon is we get some background from both Stella, who talks to Katrina about her issues, and then Ben, who talks to Kalos about his issues. So it's good, I think, to read Hoarded by the Dragon. I mean, honestly, I'd read it first, but this one is taking place at the same time, because when we go to visit Katrina and Kalos at times, she's still pregnant with the baby dragon. So that's happening, overlapping with each other. And then, yeah, so what happens though is that Remy in a previous, like earlier on, had actually proposed marriage to Stella, and he'd done it kind of like out of the blue to her, and so she said no. And now her father is dead, and now she's kind of pushed into this arranged marriage with him to try to, I don't know, kind of save her birthright or to help her people or whatever. She needs to make this alliance with him. Now, Ben is currently a very good friend of hers, but he is in love with Stella at the same time. He has been pining after her. And so when she marries Remy, he's very upset about this. Now, Remy, he wants to use Ben's power. So Ben is a demon. He can teleport. He has a couple other things he can do. Stella, as I said, she is part witch, part shifter. She has power using stone or metals. She has metals give her different powers and strengths, and metals mean different things to her, so she uses that. And then so there's all those different things. So Remy, he's very interested in keeping Ben very close to him. So he actually makes Ben an offer, and he tells him, he's like, you can be my wife's bodyguard, and if she's interested, you can be more than her bodyguard if you're also more than that to me. So Remy basically puts forward, hey, this woman you've been pining after all these times and you're friends with, you can fuck her if you're willing to fuck me too. So welcome to a possible menage going on. So that is a very probably poor way to explain it, but it's also what's going on. So if you look at some of the stuff that Lillian Lark shares, one of the things she says is that it's an MMF, but the M's hate each other. But there is sword crossing though. So they start off kind of hating each other, and there's a lot of games being played. But Remy's ultimate goal, in a way, what he thinks his goal is that he needs Stella and he needs Ben, and he knows that Stella wants to fuck him, and he knows that Ben wants to fuck him, and so he wants to keep them in line by having them be attracted to him, having them crave, having sex with him, and then he can be the dominant force and come in and do his stone daddy things that he does, and Ben can be the aftercare for Stella. Actually made a note about that when I was reading that, that's what Remy's plan is though, right? He's like, we'll have this, I'll be the hard side, I'll be the dom side, and Ben can take care of the romantic needs for me. That's what he thinks it's going to be, but good luck with that, Remy, good luck. So there is a little bit of plot going on in the background, of course, but this really is an erotic romance. It is much more focused on what their sexual relationship is doing for them. So even though I have this categorized as fantasy because it is a monster romance, I usually put those in fantasy, it really is about the sex. And as the sex gets more serious, as they get more vulnerable with each other, that's going to freak some people, aka Remy, out a little bit. It's going to freak him out a little bit. It's going to be a lot. So anyway, that is that one. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I gave this one 4.5 stars because, again, the plot was a little weird at the end. It's a 4 on the spice scale, and of course we have some kinks here, okay? We have some anal, they are sharing, there's sword crossing, there is a dominant, there's DP, there's he's too big for both of them. There's that. And then there is also some pain play that happens. There is breeding, and there's breeding for pregnancy. And there is violence against a pregnant woman in here. So, and as I said, you should read Hoarded by the Dragon first. All right, next up was Mr. Broody, which if you watched my monthly wrap-up, you'll know this was one of my top 5 reads. This book is out? Mr. Broody is out. Okay, yeah, Mr. Broody is out. This is a hockey romance. It's book 2 in the Nest series by Piper Rain. This one is a second chance single dad to an adopted son, by the way, so there's no other woman at all, and hockey player. And the first one in this series was Mr. Heartbreaker, and this one I had an ALC of this from Valentine PR. And this one has a full cast narration. So it has J.F. Harding and Brooke Bloomingdale are doing the main characters. And this is also duet style, right? Of course, with a full cast, you would have that. And then there is multiple casts in the background. And the way that I explain this is that specifically I believe there's going to be 4 of them. The 4 heroes, they are narrated by who will narrate them in their own book. That's how we do it. And then there's a different heroine each time. And then there's one other female narrator each time who does, who the next heroine will be. Is that how they're, I don't know. Either way, there's a full cast of the men and there's 2 female narrators. And so there's just all of that going on. And I love those kind of productions. I love it. But even more on top of that, I loved this romance, okay? This story is, they were high school sweethearts, so they were friends to lovers. They dated through college. Then when he was going into the professional hockey game, and she is a photographer, this is where I got the sports and photography like blended together for me. She was into photography, and they broke up. And for the first few years after their breakup, they were still very much in love. They broke up for career reasons. I'm not going to go into all of it, but I found it to be a semi-valid reason that they broke up. You know, it wasn't, nobody cheated, nobody did a big lie, nobody like broke anyone's trust. It was that like, we're pursuing different things, we're still very young, let's break up for now, we'll come back together someday. That is kind of how it was, right? And we know people who've done that. There was no big hurt, but it's very clear that these two are soulmates. Like, they absolutely are. And so, yeah, I don't want to spoil all the things, but for the first few years after they broke up, they still would like see each other. But now they haven't spoken in 3+ years, and the heroine's back in town to help with something. I think is her mom sick, or her mom had a surgery or something or whatever. I don't know, but she's in between jobs, and so she's home for a while. And the thing is, Henry, our hero, and his son, they're very close with her family still. She has a stepdad who is basically like a dad to Henry too, because Henry was adopted by his grandparents. He was raised by his grandparents, and her, what's her name, by the way? Jade, she had been, like, her stepdad has been like her dad for most of her whole life. Her real dad is a big time lawyer. He pretty much like ignores her, doesn't pay a lot of attention to her. So that guy was really her dad. And also to Henry too. So it's this sticky thing where he's spent more time with her family than she has. She has younger half brothers who are twins that are with her stepdad and mom. And they know Henry like better than her. And so it's this weird thing where, you know, again, there isn't this type of betrayal because there wasn't this like huge thing. There is still stuff, like, I don't want to spoil this whole thing for you. Like, there is something that has like reason for Jade to be upset with him, but it wasn't because of cheating or horrible things or whatever. There's reasons, and they're reasons that feel real. So I don't want to spoil them, but why I like ramble on about that is those are the type of second chances that I really gravitate towards. Because again, when there's a reason for you to break up, but yet there's still so much love there, I believe it when there's a second chance. Because you change. In 3 years, you change. Henry's a dad. He had other priorities at the time, and she has a career. And so there's all those things. But now's the question is like, is her wandering time done? Does she want to settle down? Does she want to be a mom to his little boy? And can they make it work? So that's really what this is about. And it was just so sweet. Like, the story was so sweet, you guys. The mutual pining, the bit of like flashbacks, angst, and like these two have shared so much. Like, this cover, I feel, almost doesn't do it justice. Though this is a cute cover, okay? I love the covers for this series. I'm not dissing them in any way. I think these are adorable. These are the kind of like cartoon/animated covers that I'm okay with because they still show so much personality. And I love like the little boy skating in the background of it. Like, it's cute. But I mean, this to me should have more of a cover of like a Corinne Michaels, or like a Kristen Proby, to show like the longing between them more, because that's really what was in here. And it was also just fun. The found family, the guys who all live in that apartment building, they are the best. So like, this was so good. So even if you don't want to read Mr. Heartbreaker, which was a one-night stand that like, and it was a brothers teammate situation, I really think you should read this one. You could hop right into it. Highly recommend the audiobook. I really liked this so much, and it was a 5-star read for me. Absolutely. I gave it 5 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale, but really it's about so much more than that. There is a trigger warning for a bit of grief in this one. But otherwise, this was just great. It was great. like, for real, this was close to being a 6-star book for me. There was just a few things where I was like, I mean, 5 stars legit, you know? And also, I think part of it is this was one of my last books of the year, and so I'm rereading all my favorites, and I wasn't quite at, you know, if I'd given it 6 stars, it would have been kind of at the bottom of my 6 stars anyway, so I don't know, but it was good, so recommend it. Okay, next up, there is Empire of Temptation by Mila Finelli. This is the start of a spin-off series of hers that's going to be called, like, oh shoot, I didn't write it down. Wait, did I? It should be in here. Duh, I do write that stuff down. New York State of Mafia is what this one will be. And I actually thought this was going to be a whole, like, completely new. I don't know. And maybe it's just the way she worded, like, a whole new series. Like, it is new. But we do have cameos from both Fausto, and like name dropping of Alessio, and we also see Enzo and Gianna in this book. So all of those people show up. This is not that far removed from this series back here, the Kings of Italy. This is just going to be the American branch of this, okay? And I won't spoil how that happens, because in the beginning, our hero, Luca, classic Mafia name here, he is in the Italian Mafia to begin. Like, he is from Italy, and he is in New York, which he's in a small town in New York. It isn't supposed to be like New York itself. And there's our heroine, whose name is Valentine, whatever her name is there, who owns a small Italian restaurant, okay? But not an authentic Italian restaurant, but it's an Italian restaurant. And her mother has died a few years ago, and so she's running this restaurant. She's only, I think, 21, 22, which I can't even imagine. I can't. But her mother has died of cancer, and she's barely holding this place together. And the very beginning of this, so first we have a chapter from the hero. We find out that he's pissed some people off in Italy. He's gotten himself in a bit of a sticky situation. So much so that they're like, for you to get this taken care of, you need to go to America and kidnap this girl. Because she is the daughter of a mafia guy who is on the run, and we want him to turn himself in. And he will do that if you kidnap his daughter. So he's told to do that. Okay, so that's all that we know that, like, he's being sent to do. So then we go to Val, who, her restaurant is falling apart. And this one night, like, everything goes to shit at once, okay? So her cook, she finds out, is, like, being bad, and one of her waitresses is sleeping with a cook, and so they all, like, basically, like, everyone quits except her dishwasher. And it happens to be that Luca has come in to eat at this restaurant, right? He's kind of scoping out what's going on. And he sees all of this happen to her. And he sees, she's like, I'm sorry, sir, we'll have to close for tonight. And he's like, but I'm hungry. So let me make, so he literally walks her back to the kitchen and has her sit down, and he makes her dinner. And is like, none of this stuff is really Italian. What are you doing? She's like, it's the Italian that's comfort food to us here. He's like, you know that chicken parm is an Italian. So there's this banter going back about what type of food she should be serving. And she's not using, like, the real types of cheeses. She doesn't have the right wine. But yet, so he's critiquing all these things. But it's so charming. And she's having the worst day of her life, you know, since her mother died. It's worse that her mother died. But just having the worst day. We find out through her talking to him that, like, she doesn't see her dad. She's seen her dad only a couple times in her, like, adult life and everything. He left her and her mom. Like, we hear all these things. So we know that Luca is kind of pumping her for information, and we know that she doesn't know who, like, what her dad is or any of that stuff. But he makes her this dinner, and then he, like, there's crazy tension between the two of them. And he's like, you know what? Just close the place down today. Try it again tomorrow. And so the next day when she, like, comes into work, there is this professional maitre d' and chef who show up to help her, like, renovate her restaurant. And Luca has called in some people who, you know, owe him some favors. And she now has, like, super high level people who are going to be, like, helping her renovate her restaurant, because she does need to close it down for a while because she's lost all this staff. And so in the midst of this, like, mafia story, we have this, like, restaurant rescue Gordon Ramsay thing going on at the same time. But much nicer, much less yelling. So that's happening. Now, at the same time, so this is a pretty big age gap. I believe he's 38, she's 21. He has 2 sons, one of who is almost the same age as her. He doesn't have a wife, though. Both of his sons are from different mothers. He has, I forgot what it's called. Is it like Manuata or whatever the mistress is called? Whatever Frankie was like supposed to be for Fausto, but ends up not, like that's what he's had. So he doesn't have a woman or anything. And he's like too old for her. He knows he shouldn't like get involved with her. He's supposed to kidnap her and bring her back. But he decides, not only because he's like, this girl, she doesn't know any of this stuff. I'm gonna hang around her and see if it calls her dad out. Because what Luca suspects, and what like is actually right, is that it's not so much that her dad doesn't want anything to do with her. It's that he's a mafia guy who's been on the run for how many years, and he doesn't want his daughter in the line of fire. That doesn't mean he doesn't care. And so Luca is like, I'm gonna just stick around, and this girl's really beautiful, so maybe, you know, I'll get to do both. I'll get to do my job, and maybe I'll get a little bit of fun. But I loved this. I did. It has just that bit of ridiculousness that Mila Finelli puts into her Mafia. As I said, we do get some cameos from some people, and to not like spoil the whole thing, but this is called the New York State of Mafia. There isn't anyone currently running the Italian, like the Sicily families in this area, because it isn't New York City, it's New York State in this like smaller area. There's nobody running it there. And so this series, there's like Enzo, he's in Canada, and then, you know, the Sicilians over there. So this is going to be like the start of that branch is where this will end up by the end of the HEA that they have. So this one isn't a two, like there was an HEA for this couple, is great. We do get some really fun kinky things with these people. So our heroine is virgin, and it's one of those where, like, of course, she's a book reader. She has all these fun ideas. And when eventually they start having sex, there is a lot of, like, fun stuff in this one, which Mina Finelli always brings. So there's very light daddy kink. There's a super... It is not overdone at all. It actually only happens in, like, 1 or 2 scenes. And the first time it happens, I was, like... I was so wetting because it was hot. There's some... lots of face sitting, man. He wants her to sit on his face so much. There's some outdoor sex and some of those things. So then there's also trigger warnings for death, loss of a parent, violence, and kidnapping here. So I gave this 4.5 stars, and I only took half a star off because the plot got a little bit weird at the end. But yeah, and it also had a type of third act breakup that kind of annoyed me. So it wasn't the worst thing ever. And it also had like reasons for how it happened. And I really liked how we resolved the third act breakup in this one. I'll tell you that. I really liked the resolution to it all. So I gave it a 4.5 star, rounded up to a 5. 3.5. Highly recommend. Great start to a new series. And I'm excited for there to be more. I hope she's going to do another one soon. Because as you know, or maybe you don't, but Mila Finelli is Joanna Shupe. And Joanna Shupe doesn't have a historical coming out till August. She was supposed to have a historical out in, I think, March, and it got moved back to August, which will also be, I believe, set in New York because it's going to be Gilded Age, so that'll be interesting. But anywho, all right, moving on. We'll be able to talk about these two quickly, though, which is great because we're 40 minutes in. I'll just show them. I had next were my rereads of Wild Love and Wild Eyes. These were the last 2 that I finished before I did my top 10. So if you want the deep dive on these books and why they were 6 stars for me, check out my yearly wrap up, my 2024 wrap up. But these were both 6 stars. What I will say here is that the whole reason I do the rereads is because I fully acknowledge that when I read a book that makes me really happy and gives me my endorphin dump, I'm very likely to give it 6 stars. I have been a bit picky with it lately, which is why I only had 14 6 stars in 2024. But that happens to me. And Elsie Silver really knows how to end a book. So I'm always like, did I just give this 6 stars because, I was in the moment? And also these are really popular books. And sometimes even I can't help but want to get swept up in the excitement of things like that, But upon rereading these two, I actually liked, number one, I even liked Wild Love even more because the pining is so good. Like, there's a line that gets said, like, I would have broke every speed limit to get to you. When you know the context of that, love it. This one, loved it even more. I was much more aware of actually some of the sensitivities that West has that I related to so much more than I expected. Like him, like being the life of the party, being the jokester, everybody loves him. But when his kids aren't staying with him, he is like, I'm going to be alone forever, because he doesn't think that he's a commitment type of guy. And so those things like sneak in on him. And I just really related to that so much. So not that I have kids, but the thing of like, am I going to be alone forever? The life of the party and everybody else is settled down except for you. That is my life right now, right? That literally every single friend that I possess is married right now. So, you know, you feel those things. So I just related to it so much more. So both of those stayed 6-star reads, and you can find out how high up they were on my top 10 list by checking out that video. Or listen to an ALC of Stealing Sunshine by Hannah Cowan. So this actually just released on the 3rd as well. And this is book 4 in the, sorry, what are my notes here? This was book 4 in the Cherry Peak series. Okay, did I not write that down? Oh, that's right, I don't have that in there anymore. And this was narrated by Andy Arndt and Kristen DiMarcurio. And this, I didn't know what I was going to think about. This is a sapphic romance, but I've loved the last 2 books in Cherry Peak. And this couple was set up in that previous one. And I was intrigued. So I was like, you know what? I just haven't read a ton of sapphic at all. And they're not my favorite thing to read, or, you know, so I would think. And I've shared my reasonings for this before. This has no reason to go with like an aversion or I'm like whatever, but I'm into men and I share this. So that's why I like romance or MMF romance. I'm more about more P's and less V's. Okay. I just am. Just how it is. And I'm not shamed for that. And I don't shame anyone else for what they want to read, but that doesn't mean I'm not intrigued to read more or that I am unwilling to read them. I just don't, number one, there aren't a ton of them that I'm intrigued by, but I've read a few. I've read, I'd say like 5 to 10 in the last couple of years. So definitely a small percentage. Definitely the queer romances I read are way more on the side. Like it's true. Anyway, all of that to say, I knew I was going to read this one because I liked the previous 2. And this one is a friend's sister romance. We have Bryce. She's the grumpy in here. She's a tattoo artist, but her father is actually the mayor. And so during the day, she works for the mayor and she has to be all buttoned up and serious and all these things. Her parents know that she's bisexual, but her mom is constantly setting her up on dates only with men. She only sets her up with men. Thinks that sure, she might be bisexual, but she's going to settle down with a man, which I know, not speaking of like from my own experience, but from other bisexual friends and people I've talked to, that is something that gets told to them or pushed to them that like, oh, well, liking women is just a phase or this or whatever. And it goes, I'm sure that happens to bisexual men too, in the opposite direction, right? So she feels very disrespected in that, and she feels very trapped. And again, she loves to tattoo, but she lives in Cherry Peak, and there isn't enough clients for her to sustain being a tattoo artist. So she does it on the sly. She's like a midnight tattoo artist type of thing. Then we have Daisy, who is the twin sister of the hero from book 3. And she has moved back to town. She's going to be a teacher. She has a teaching job in Cherry Peak, but she doesn't have a place to stay right now because she's been staying with her brother, but her brother just got with his girlfriend and she's sick of listening to them fuck every night. She's just doesn't want to listen to her twin getting it on every night. And so it gets brought up that Bryce has room. She could take a roommate. And so her brother like gets Bryce to agree to that. Now Bryce has been secretly pining over Daisy for a long time. And if you read book 3, this is why like I was pretty excited to read this, because they even call Bryce, her nickname is Ice because she's so like ice cold, which I'm like, that's kind of a cute nickname for Bryce, but also because she's seen as a cool collected one, but there are little hints at what's underneath her. And Daisy is just sunshine, happiness, beautiful. It's just this, she's a teacher, like all of these things. And so really what Bryce is worried about is that she's not going to be able to keep her cool around Daisy living in her house. And she doesn't want to make a move on her, make her uncomfortable. And also it's her friend's sister. So there's all that. But this becomes a fake dating sapphic romance when, to get Bryce's mom to stop setting her up on dates, Daisy is like, well, what if you had a girlfriend? Then your mom couldn't keep setting you up because you're dating someone. And so Bryce is like, well, I guess so. And she's like, well, I'll be your fake girlfriend. And so that's how we lead to that. And Bryce is now like, oh my God, now not only is she living with me, but I have to touch her in public. And how am I not going to blow the secret that I have for her? So this was really sweet. I loved it. There was just a little bit of angst. It was mostly pining and some misunderstandings because, again, Bryce is very like serious and like holds it all in and is the grumpy, and Daisy is like used to living in a house where everybody talks about what their issues are. She's also never had to hide her sexuality because she has two moms. So Daisy is a lesbian and Bryce is bisexual. And Daisy was raised by two moms, and so she's never had to hide how she felt or anything. So there's that. Bryce also, her previous relationship with a woman went very badly. So there's also that. So even though she wants to date a woman, she also has that as well. So all of those things combined, this was so sweet. Really, the only reason this one wasn't 5 stars, so I gave this one 4.5. The only reason this one wasn't 5 is that it drug on a bit. Like, I feel like this could have been perfect if we cut out about 30 to 40 pages in the middle where we were having the same scenarios over and over and over again. You know how I feel about that. There's certain scenarios of like the almost kiss or the almost tell how you feel that my like limit is for you to do 2 or 3 of those. And in this, we had like 6 or 7 of them. There was a lot of them. And I maybe could understand that if this was like a gay for you situation, right? But this one isn't. Like, they both are out and they both know the other one is out. So like in MM romance, when there's a lot of those and it's a gay for you or a bisexual awakening, I'm okay with more almost, because you don't want to like get that wrong. So I can understand someone being hesitant. But yeah, so I give it 4.5 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale, and there was lots of sex toys being used, which was great. Okay, so I gotta wrap this up, man. This one wasn't supposed to be almost an hour long, but look at us here. But the last thing that I read, which I can't really talk about anyway, I'm just gonna tease you about it so I can go quickly. So I've shared this to my patrons. I can't remember if I've said it on a video here or not, but I'm now an assistant for Claire Kent / Noelle Adams. I started on the 1st, and my very first like job, I shouldn't use quotation, the work I'm doing for her is I'm doing some pre-work for her upcoming release in February, which is going to be Devotion. Here's the cover of it. It's not available for pre-order yet, but so I got this book to read, and I'm going to help create some of the like promo stuff and things like that for it. So I got to read this book. Now, she hasn't released a blurb or said what this is about, so I want to be very careful not to do that because I don't want to blow it with my first one that I'm getting to work for. But this is a new series that she's starting, and she hasn't said, really, there's not even a blurb out for this yet. So I'll just say that it's definitely in line with Claire Kent books. Like, I don't know if people have read Escorted or if they've read some of hers that aren't the Kindled series, but she does say what is public, and she says that it's in line with some of the older Claire Kent. Like, she says that. So like the Hold series and what are some of the other ones? Like, we'll say with the Hold series and things like that. So it is dystopian. And the characters' names are Gabriel, who is, I believe he's like 40, and our heroine is Jess, and I think she's 23. And this involves a type of sex deal which again, if you've read Claire, a lot of them have that. And it involves, it's a dystopian world, and Gabriel has a job within the government, and he is gifted a partner. You're able to choose a man or a woman if you want, who will see to all of your needs so that your mind is free and clear to do your job. So there are women and men who are called partners, and their job is to be the partner to these administrators and see to all of their needs. It doesn't just have to be sexual, but it usually is going to be. And our heroine, Jess, no one's forced her into this job. It is a job that she is very eager and excited to do. She hasn't been chosen by anyone before yet. And by doing it, she gains wealth and prestige for her family. So it was giving me minds of almost like, I can't even think of what I wanted to compare it with, but that's the type of setup that this is. And again, if you've read some older Claire Kent, you know what type of story this is going to be, okay? This is the type of story where it's absolutely sex first and then mutual pining for each other, but we think the other one is only with us because of the sex. Lots of her stories are like that. Even like books in the Kindle series are like that, all of those things. So that is as much as I feel comfortable saying until she releases the blurb and I can share what she wants people to know about it, right? Again, I want to be really cautious with it. And also what I wanted to share with you guys is, because now I am her assistant, I will no longer be sharing my ratings for these because I just don't think that's appropriate. I did the same thing while I was working for Maggie Cole. I'm not going to share with you what my ratings are for it, but that doesn't mean I won't still gush and talk about it, but you will know, but I will do that with you having the knowledge that I work for her. So of course I'm going to be excited about it, but if any of them I have a serious problem with, I will tell you, but I also would never badmouth someone that I'm working for. So you just have to know that now. I love Claire Kent with my whole heart. I've been a fan for 5 years now, but I will of course continue to share her books with you, but I'm not going to tell you my ratings or what it is. And again, once we have the blurb of that, I'm sure I will talk about that one again and tell you the more specific things about it. But anyway, I think you'll all like it is what I'll say about it, especially if you love the Hold series or some other books from her. So there we go. That is wrapping up this week. And again, I just need to stop saying I'll be done quickly because I still found a way to talk this long. But thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you to my new patrons. Thank you to everyone who joined in the month of giving. If you're interested in supporting what I do here, make sure you, for starters, all you got to do is like this video, leave a comment down below, leave me some snowflakes. Let's do that. Leave me some snowflakes. And, yeah, check out my Patreon. There's channel memberships and all those good things. So thanks so much for watching, friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.